Hey, everybody, and welcome to Right in Front of My Face, the podcast that talks about big things happening right in front of us. I am your host, Shannon Hull, and obviously the biggest thing that's happening in front of us is a global pandemic. I am in this with all of you. My husband was mandated to shut down his pediatric dental practice, and I'm now a full-time homeschool teacher. Life as we know it has changed forever, and it's feeling a little overwhelming right now. There's a part of me that wants to spend an entire episode talking about it, but the last week has been so crazy that I haven't felt like I would be able to do this topic any service with just me talking about the emotional roller coaster of the last week. What I'm going to try to do is find an angle to present this information and give you something hopefully in the coming weeks that's well thought out and helpful rather than reactionary. So in the meantime, I'm going with what I had planned for the last episode of season 1. And you heard that right. 10 episodes finished completes my first season of Right in Front of My Face. There will be a season 2, and I have already recorded some episodes that are in the bank. I am going to take about a month to regroup. I am going to put out some of my old podcasts as substitute for content. And like I said, I will figure out how to podcast about the coronavirus. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around it right now. So subscribe so you don't miss anything. And you can obviously go on to Instagram, Twitter, and my website, and I'll have updates for you there as well. But let's move on to episode 10. I first saw my next guest at a 5-year-old's birthday party last summer. He was the entertainment, and he called himself Daffy Dave.
My name is Daffy Dave, and I will show you how to sing a song and clean your room. Your parents will say, wow. So
he mesmerized a group of kids in a way that I'd never seen an entertainer do before. He was magical, hilarious, and completely entertaining. Then I saw he was teaching a magic class at a community center this winter, and I immediately signed up my 8-year-old son, Luke. I described Dave to a friend by saying he was a cool uncle we all wished we'd had. He was gentle, patient, and willing to show us all the tricks and also how to juggle. After the first class, I picked Luke up and asked Dave how he got into clowning. He laughed and said, "Oh man, that's a story. In fact, I wrote a book about it." His book is called Coyote Spirit and tells his journey from ordained minister to professional clowngician, as he calls himself. I sat down with Dave to talk about his book, his life, and overall perspective. And all I can tell you is that Daffy Dave is a really deep dude.
My name is Daffy Dave, and I will show you how to sing a song and clean your room. Your parents will say, whoa.
So Dave, I will start off by saying you are the first person that I've seen with their pants down before before they've been in the
I don't
studio.
recognize you with your pants on.
So Dave, I first saw at a kid's birthday party.
Right.
A friend of ours had a birthday party, and you were the entertainment, and you were amazing with the kids and the parents. We were all cracking up. You performed for a solid hour, and those kids did not move, and it was a 5-year-old's birthday party. So, I mean, it was really remarkable. And then I had seen in one of our community center catalogs that you were offering a circus magic class. And when I saw that you were the instructor, my son is the performer that he is. I thought, oh my gosh, I have got to get this kid in with Dave.
Wow.
And so the first day of class, we walk in, Luke literally had the best hour of his life.
Oh, that was fun, that first class. Yeah.
And then I asked you afterwards, how do you get into clowning? And you just kind of looked at me and you shrugged and you said, oh man, that's a story. And in fact, it's such a long story. I wrote a book about it.
Oh yeah, I know. It is a long story.
And so about your book, I read it on our midwinter break when I was in Arizona. And look, it's like got water stained because I had it by the pool.
Wow.
I put notes in it. I dog-eared it. I really loved this book. It's called Coyote Spirit, From the Improbable Transformation from Minister to Clown. And I invited you on the podcast because this is a heck of a story. And Dave, you are a deep dude.
Yeah, well, I like to tell people that deep down inside, I'm really superficial.
I think you'd have to dig really far below the surface to find your superficial side.
Yeah, thanks.
But watching you with the kids that you teach, watching you with the kids that you perform with, I do believe that anybody who works with children has a calling. And after reading your book, it is clear that it is a calling for you.
Very much.
And so I would like to turn the microphone over to you a little bit and have you kind of start at the beginning. I'd like you to take us through your life story, kind of talk about some of the things that you have had to go through to get to where you are today. And then we can go from there.
Wow. Okay. Let me just take a sip of this tea. If you don't
I know.
mind.
So Dave's been teaching a class already for an hour, a music and movement class.
Oh, 2 hours. Music, movement, and story class over at the Green Lake Preschool. I've done it in other schools too before, but I've been sort of new here in Seattle for the last, a little over 2 years. Moved from the Bay Area, which I was there for like 25 years. And that's where Daffy Dave really was born.
So I guess I should have said that you perform under the name Daffy Dave.
Right.
And you are a vibrant performer and teacher in Seattle. You are for hire for corporate events, kids' birthday parties, and you've built a really successful career as a clown. Is that how you describe yourself, as a clown?
I call myself a clowngician.
A clowngician. That's perfect.
Because I do magic, I do juggling, I do music, and I don't wear the makeup because, I learned early on when I first got started that it just scares too many people, and I hate putting on makeup. It gets sweaty and yucky. I have a colorful costume. It's a clowny costume, but I become more of a I call it like a clown character.
Yeah.
Because I'm really into like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and then modern clowns like Jeff Hoyle and Leonard Pitt was one of my mentors in the Bay Area, and people who are like clown characters, but they don't look like the traditional clowns. They don't wear the clown, the ostentatious clown suits. Makeup.
I will say that I was Googling clown memes to maybe promote this episode. It was
good luck with that.
It was terrifying.
Terrifying. They're all
Pennywise the clown.
Yeah, that's what's happened. That's what's happened in America, especially. America has done this thing where it turns in a lot of, like even Halloween. It turned Halloween into a real scary thing. It used to be like All Saints Day, All Souls Day, and it's about honoring the ancestors and all that kind of stuff. And then it got to be a little bit of the whole goblins and ghosts, but it was real tame back when I was growing up.
Mellow. Same here.
Yeah.
I do not remember being scared, and I have 2 really sensitive kids, and Halloween is
oh my god
awful.
Well, and then there was that period of time I think the last 2 or 3 years where they were doing all these like scary clown video sightings of next to the freeway with a chainsaw.
No, it's terrible.
Right?
It's so terrible. But I really regretted my Google search. I did it right before bed last night. I'm like, this has got to be something that you come up against. But when I
Can't
did read
sleep,
in your
clowns will eat me.
seriously, I'm like, well, this is gonna give me nightmares. But but yeah, when you perform, you don't wear makeup. I think it's interesting. Yeah. My husband's a pediatric dentist, and he runs up against a similar scary stereotype, but he doesn't wear a traditional lab coat. He wears like a North Face jacket that gets washed every day, like a lab coat. But he's like, it's too scary for kids.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think he's smart to do that for sure. The costume actually helps me to get in character, right? I mean, that's why I brought those dress up things at the class the other day that your son's in, the circus magic class, because once you put on, and I try to tell the kids this too, find your character, get your hat, get the kind of look you want to have, and that will help you discover what tricks you want to do that will be coming out of your character, right?
It's so interesting that at even age 8.
Yeah, they get it.
They get it.
They totally do. It's really cool to watch. They're so hyper, which is kind of hard. It's like trying to herd cats over there, And that's the part as a teacher I always struggle with. Like, okay, how do I rein them in and yet give them the freedom of their imaginations and say like, okay, you know what, I don't know if that's really that funny,
Well, I mean, they all need to hear it though.
They need to hear they wanted to come up with their name, and they were saying different names, like they were like the Magic Jacks, and then your son said Waffles. I said, okay, now Waffle sounds funny.
Yeah.
Let's go with Magic Waffles, and now I'm thinking we should change it to Magic Waffle Heads. Just something. Just
so cute.
It's so cute. But I'm trying to get them exposed to the whole process of discovering what is funny.
Yeah.
Because I had to discover that. I'm still
discovering
it.
It's a literal art form. And I think having a mentor to guide them. I mean, really, after reading your book and after watching you work with these kids, it is clear that you have done ministry.
Oh yeah.
Work, right? Like, and that's what I kind of want to start with, I think,
Right. Okay.
is there's clearly something bigger in this for you. There's something, in my opinion, that comes through you working with these kids.
Yeah.
And to be able to be that force, I mean, like, dude, I don't think that's that funny, but not hurt their feelings.
Right. And I struggle
that
with
is
that.
some sort of spirit working through you.
Yeah.
So
I don't always do it right though. I still,
none of us do. Even
it's like, oh, I should have said it more kinder. You know, it just
there's a
blurts
time and a
out
place. There's a time and a place for everything. But I think they respect you enough to know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what mentors do. They tell it like it is. So talk to me a little bit about your. I don't want to go through your whole childhood because you've had like an extensive, and I also want to leave something mysterious so that people can get your book and read it, because you have a really interesting backstory.
There's some pretty cool stuff in there.
Yeah. So you moved around a lot as a kid. You were born where?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois.
Born in Chicago.
Illinois in 1961. And then Dad was a minister, or he was getting ordained. He was just getting out of seminary. My mom was a nurse. Then we moved to Brainerd, Minnesota for his first church, and then Minneapolis, Minnesota. Then we moved to Hawaii. That was my longest period of time in childhood growing up, was Kauai. Then we moved from there to Seattle in 1978. I was here for a couple years, and then went off to college and seminary, and I became an ordained minister, and then eventually left the church to follow my bliss. You know, the ministry thing, I was following my dad's footsteps. I was a fifth generation minister. My mom's side of the family had all these ministers, and I was okay. I mean, I was good at it. In a lot of ways, I was definitely bringing in a lot of youth to the church. So that's where you could see the connection there.
You actually started a youth center, correct?
I started a youth center in Idaho Falls, for a little period of time that it existed. Read the book if you want to find out more about that.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting.
It's an interesting experiment.
It.
So then the whole ministry thing, that, you know, it didn't work out for me. And I was battling with, you know, the demons of my addiction, right? I had to kind of wake up to the fact that I had a problem with substance abuse, you know, and that kind of thing. And that's kind of the darker side of the lower point of my life. And so I just, you know, so it was mixed in with both. I wanted to go do what I felt called to really do, which was I wanted to always live out my dream of being this creative, a lot of things, artist, Renaissance man, whatever you want to call it. Poet. I was a poet. I was a musician. I was playing in these cafes in that town too. And then it was just like I was starting to really connect with people that way with music. And I didn't really know about the clowning thing, you know, at that point too. But I don't know, it's a combination of I both wanted to leave the church and I was being asked to leave too, because
everybody wanted you to leave, Dave.
It was kind of weird.
Everybody politely asked you to leave.
Right, because I had a problem and I wasn't dealing with it, you know.
Right.
But I'm dealing with it now. I mean, 22 years in recovery and everything, and life is so much better. But back then, you know, I was just waking up to that fact, and I was also waking up with the fact that I wasn't really following my true calling. And so, you know, my friends were sitting around and at this going away party, all my Unitarian friends at that time, because they were.
And that's what church you were a part of?
No, I was part of the Congregational United Church of Christ.
Got it.
I was ordained in that one. But my friends in town were all Unitarians, because, you know, as a pastor, it's kind of hard to be friends with your church. You know, you're like this minister, counselor person, right? So I was hanging out with the other liberal people in town, you know, the Unitarians.
And Idaho Falls.
Idaho Falls, Idaho. Yeah. And it was fun. And then I was hanging out with them. We were playing music and I was playing around with their kids like I always would do. And I was like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do when I go out I was going to move out to California, live with my friend from college, Kate Ague. And she was going to help me get on my feet out there. And I wanted to start a band. I wanted to be a rock star. You know, that was my big dream, right? Ever since I was a kid.
All of us.
Oh God, right? You know, so my friend said, well, God, Dave, you know, you're always coming to our parties. You're always ending up playing with the kids and leading them in games. And, you know, why don't you just dress up like a clown and become, you know, Crazy Dave or something, and go to birthday parties and charge them money to do these birthday parties and stuff. And I was like, whoa, that sounds like a cool idea. I didn't even think about that, you know. And I just sort of played with that idea for a while, and I made up a business card called Crazy Dave, you know. And
so you were literally called yourself Crazy Dave.
I called myself Crazy Dave at first. And eventually I moved to California, and I was doing all these things. I was living in the Bay Area. I was living with my friend Kate, and I was pretty much broke, you know. And of course my mom and dad were like, oh my God, what are you going to do?
How old were you at that point?
Oh, I was like 30. And I remember at 28, 2 years before I made the decision to leave, I was already starting to think about leaving. And this is before I kind of hit bottom with the whole addiction thing too.
And we are going to come back to that.
Oh,
I'm letting you like highline your story right now.
But the point is I remember I went to an astrologer in town, Ellen Mortensen, and she said, wow, this is like your Saturn return, right? That's at age 28. And that's usually the time in life where it's either you follow your calling or it's going to start to haunt you or whatever. And I said, wow, this is exactly what's going on. I'm having this wake up call. Like this is the time to make it. I'm single. I'm not married. I don't have kids. This is like, if I decide to do it and it doesn't work out, whatever, I can go back to it or something. I can go back to it. So, but let's try it out now. And I was reading Joseph Campbell at the time, and like he was talking about following your bliss.
So I just have to step in and say, again, to the point of like, you are a deep guy. What I want to get through is the fact that you truly are a poet, and the words in your book are so deep. I just want to read something because I feel like one of the bigger takeaways that I got from this book is that you really had to take a step back and accept that this was your calling, because it's off center, right? It's like, it's not something that is, I would think, easy to say like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to entertain kids. 2 years to
make the decision.
Yeah. So this is a quote from your book. I've meditated and puzzled over the answers to these questions ever since. And in midlife, my answers have to do with faith and acceptance. My faith allows me to surrender to the horrors of life and move into acceptance of whatever is happening in each moment. I'm powerless over the existence of evil. I'm powerless over death and even ambiguity. Sometimes life is painful and sad. Sometimes it's happy and fun. All the multitudinous aspects of life exist at the same time. Life is messy. It's ambiguous. Life is mysterious and unknowable. And I feel like as I hear these words kind of sprinkled throughout your book, your surrender is one of the most powerful things I took away from your experience.
Yeah. And that's really true. I mean, that has also helped me to surrender to following my intuition. Like, okay, the money's not really coming in. There's not a lot of shows right now. As a performer, I've been doing this for 26 years.
It ebbs and flows like
ebbs and flows all the time. And like I was telling you earlier, that I've just learned now that there's been so many times where one door closes and 3 doors open. And I just feel like I've just learned from so many times of that happening that, like, okay, if a gig cancels with like this coronary, what is coronary? I call it the coronary.
I know you have braved the coronavirus.
Like that just happened recently, and I thought, okay, whatever, I'll just move on. And I'm like super low right now in cash flow, but it's like, something's going to work. And then all of a sudden I get a request to buy one of my paintings from somebody in France. And I'm shipping a painting down to southern France. So,
crazy.
I just know it doesn't matter. One thing and another thing, it will just work out. But I've done this for so long, I've gotten used to it,
But you have to accept that.
You have to accept it. You have to surrender. And, one thing's going to be happening that's going to be like, kind of like abundant or whatever. And the other thing is going to be looking like it's not abundant, but just chill out, because it's all going to work out. So
what I'm hearing, and this was also something that I've been dying to talk to you about. So I'm Catholic. I was born Catholic. But one thing I read about your decision to leave the ministry was you alluding to the fact that this particular branch of religion started feeling so constrictive to you.
Well, it wasn't just any branch. And the one I was in was very liberal. I mean, we still today, it's very social justice, liberals, gays, women are ordained. It's very open to everyone, very open and inclusive. That wasn't the problem. It was organized religion in general, all organized religion.
Which is tough when you're a minister.
Yeah.
That's
right?
a tough gig if you're starting to really question that. But you really describe in this book a pantheistic view of religion that to me, really spoke to me. I thought, wow, there's something to this, because you're kind of pulling from all different places. Right. Can you talk to me a little bit about like what opened your eyes kind of and how you surrendered to that?
There's probably a lot of answers to that. In general, I got to say that with Joseph Campbell, I had some parishioners at the time that we would go together, and we would listen to his tapes, the Bill Moyers interviews and stuff like that. And we were just really into it. And I would try to bring some of this stuff into the church I was in, which was very liberal. I had all this kind of pretty out there, esoteric, new agey kind of stuff in my church, right? And then some people were a little bit opposed to it,
Sure.
Even as liberal as that what church was. But anyway, the Joseph Campbell stuff, it kind of opened up my heart and my mind. I think at the point, it just made me feel like, as much as I love the church and I value it, and I never did really ever say it was bad.
No, absolutely not.
And I still, to this day, I go to church now with my mom and dad. And I still love a lot of stuff that's there.
Well, and that's another thing I thought was cool, is that it wasn't bad mouthing. You're just kind of like, I'm not sure this is congruent with.
It just wasn't my calling. At that time, I was definitely more reactionary against organized religion, whereas now I'm a lot more accepting of it and see the value of it and even participate in it.
Right.
But I'm very eclectic. I mean, it's like both and. I can be in the organized religion world, but I'm also very comfortable like just having a mystical communion with everyday direct experience with a higher power of God, whatever you want to call it. You don't really need to have a church in order to find that, but I do feel like you need to have some kind of spiritual community of some kind.
I agree
whether
with
it's
that.
friends or like in recovery, like I'm in 12-step recovery, there's all this spiritual community in the sense that people care about each other's journeys spiritually, like about how they're doing, how they're growing, and if they're having a hard time and struggling, how to get through that or whatever. And so I think we need that. We all need conscious spiritual community of some kind. Jung talked about that. You have to have that. So.
Well, I just think it's such a unique point of view with a ministerial background. You've been to school and you're saying like, hey, I don't care where you get it from.
Yep.
Whatever speaks to you.
Totally.
And if you aren't feeling, I will say I'm kind of like an apple picking Catholic. Like I don't necessarily believe in the dogmas of like the virgin birth and I struggle with stuff like that. And I will say when I was reading your book, I thought, oh my gosh, he's describing some of these things because I believe in a construct of prayer and discipline of it. But what that looks like, the older I get, I'm like, oh, I'm not, it made me feel very normal to read your book. And I appreciated your perspective on it by saying, let's feed that soul however we can.
Right.
It doesn't matter so much.
Right. And I mean, if you think about it too, if anybody out there is listening and they're a traditional Christian of some kind, of any whatever branch, denomination, you can take and look at some of the essential sort of teachings of Jesus or whatever in the Bible, and there's so many things that sort of validate what we're talking about right now. The kingdom of God is within you. Like he would say oftentimes, in the New Testament, or your faith has saved you. Go go walk away and take your mat and walk. And he would say a lot of things that would point to the fact that you're going to do. He would say you're going to do greater things than I have. And may you be one as me and my Father are one. I mean, so may you have the same kind of awareness I'm having right now. And so, I mean, he was constantly trying to get people to see, wake up, dudes. It's not just me. You have this too.
Right.
And I'm just trying to here to show you this thing.
Right.
And sorry to get so vernacular there.
No,
I don't know if Jesus ever said, dude.
No, I love it because I don't think that this particular topic gets talked about that much. And I want your perspective on it. And I want other people to hear your perspective on it because, I mean, as odd as it sounds, it completely informs your profession. Again, your book is not about becoming a clown. It is about your journey as a human being. And this is a huge part of it. So talk to me a little bit about, you're going through this kind of like, your eyes are open. You realize this is not your calling, but then you start using, and it gets pretty heavy.
Right. When I was in seminary, and even before that, I was struggling with substances, chemical substances. And particularly for me, it was marijuana, right? Marijuana, alcohol, and a couple different hallucinogenics. A lot of times I was doing it ever since I was like 14, because one, it made me feel somehow okay, euphoric, and it made me feel connected. It made me feel like cool. I could talk to friends. I could talk to girls or whatever at that time when I was like 14 when it started and stuff in Hawaii. But I was also, what I was trying to do, I was really trying to seek a conscious contact with a higher power through the drug.
And so you were thinking that was going to get you to that next plateau.
Well, and many times it kind of felt like it was. But then the problem is that quickly, the fog came in and the remorse and then the problems and the apathy and the bad school attendance and things like that. So it became fun at first and mysterious, and then it became fun with problems, and then it became all problems, right? That was the general trajectory. Then I wanted to stop, but I didn't know how I couldn't stop. You know what I mean? So, and then it got to the point where, I was trying to get high, but it wasn't even getting me high. And it wasn't even taking me out of the emotional pain that I was in at the time.
And then you're just using to be normal?
Right. And then what happens is, and then for me, then at that point, I became in what they call the gift of desperation. Like I couldn't stop, but I wanted to stop. And so I was torn, right? And then I was depressed and crying. And then finally I wandered up into the shores of 12-step recovery, surrendered to the fact that, one, I was an addict, and two, that I needed something else.
But that surrender took you a long time.
It took me a long time. I had to try it a couple of different times, and I wasn't really getting it.
Which I think is pretty normal.
Oh, yeah. It's not everybody's story.
I can't speak to it personally.
Yeah. It's not everybody's story. Some people just hit it and they take off running and they never relapse or whatever. But I had to go through it a couple of different times. Now, to go backtrack. So there was two streams there. There was one, I was realizing the ministry thing wasn't for me. I wanted to really be like a rock star, entertainer of some kind, a creative person. And two, I think I was falling back into my addiction, because I was clean for a while when I was a minister. I wasn't really, I wasn't using it at all. But then I started thinking about it, because I think it was because I was getting stressed out that I didn't want to be there. You know what I mean? And so I was I was using to try to ameliorate that pain, that emotional pain of finding myself on a ladder up, but on the wrong wall, Right. So I was
climbing higher and higher, and you're like, this is not the wall
I'm going to be on. Oh my God, what do I do? So, of course I relapsed. Right.
Yep.
And then all these problems happened. But it also kind of, in a way, even though I'm sorry, it caused a lot of problems, and I had to make amends later on with the 12 steps to a lot of those people that I hurt, actually, in my congregation, which, thank God for recovery helping that process to make those amends to
and
people.
How humbling.
It's very humbling. It was difficult.
It's humbling enough to say you're sorry on like a good day.
Right?
Yes.
I know, right?
And you're like, this is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it was very hard. That's why in the 12 steps, it leads you to that place to be able to do it, because you have to get to a place of identifying all these things and admitting it, and then the defects that lead to those behaviors that cause the harm, and then you basically come to a place of forgiveness in yourself, and you can't really start to make amends to other people until you forgive yourself. And so the steps get you there.
And until you admit you have a
well, you have to start
problem.
there. That's step one, right?
Yeah.
You have a problem, and then number two is like, oh, okay, I have a problem now. I need help. I need somebody. And number three, I'm willing to get the help.
If you don't mind me asking, I'm really curious about the addiction to marijuana specifically, because I feel like this is a drug that is now legal in our state. Mm-hmm. It comes in.
I have such a resentment on that. I say, why wasn't it legal when I was back in? You know what I mean?
Sure. But you didn't get into trouble, though.
What?
You never got into trouble, or at least you don't write about it.
No, you're right. That's not the kind of trouble that you would think, like in jail or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, right, exactly. But the point is, you're right. Now it's legal, and there's such of kind of like a laissez-faire, whatever you want to call it. Like, oh, this is all good, man.
Yeah, and I feel like I can count 20 people immediately who I know use.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think it's one of those things that because it's legal, I mean, I think the same thing about alcohol. I think so many of us abuse alcohol because it's legal and socially acceptable and helps with anxiety, which all of us have. I think we don't talk about the fact that it can be just as addictive as any other drug.
Right. I mean,
do you have feelings or opinions about that?
I mean, that drug brought me to my knees, because it wasn't really it was what is known as drug of choice, right? So you can use anything that's a mind or mood altering substance. And if you are caught up in the hell of dependency on that compulsively and obsessively, it doesn't matter if it's marijuana, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, you name it. Whatever. It could be a process addiction. It could be gambling. It could be sex. It could be romance. It could be all kinds of things that get you, but in terms of like a mind or mood altering substance, it doesn't matter if it's marijuana or anything else. If you are caught up in a hell where you are obsessively and compulsively using that substance, and then you're not being able to be present, and available emotionally to yourself, to other people, to a greater power of your understanding or your non-understanding or your children or your animals or nature, if it's taking you out of being present in the moment, that is addiction. That is addiction.
Thank you for spelling that out, because I do think that it needs to get talked about as a potential thing you can be addicted to, because I think it is very laissez-faire as is.
Yeah. Because there's stores now. But then, look, there's stores that sell alcohol, and guess what? They have AA.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if it's legal. It doesn't matter.
I think, I don't know. I think like anything else, there's a fine line with it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal decision, right? Everybody's got to make their own personal decision.
Right, and it's kind of like party if you want to party, but no. I
know people who do it, and it seems to be fine. They don't have an obsessive compulsive disorder with it. Right. But if you are a person that has some kind of, it's a mystery. What is this disease thing? It's, I don't know. It's hard to say where that comes from. I mean, there are theories about that. It actually started happening more when the Industrial Revolution started hitting in our history, because people became more and more separated and isolated and lack of community. And so that fomented this isolation and self-medication through substances. Now, I don't know. That's just one theory.
You have a quote about that, actually.
Do I have that?
You do.
Quote?
You totally do.
Ooh,
and
that's from The Hungry Ghost, I believe that guy's name is.
I just had it marked. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
here we go.
No kidding.
Yeah, you sure do. In the realm of hungry ghosts, right? Look at it. See, I took notes.
Illuminate me on my book.
I told you I did. A cold-hearted attitude by those in power which values profits over the well-being of people leads to a break in belonging on a societal level. So in cultures where more in harmony, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying.
There's less. That's probably why there's probably some of these indigenous cultures around the world that use sort of like plants like ayahuasca, or I would never be able to do it myself, but and they do it, and it helps people to have these awakenings. But they're not addicts. They have this little ceremony, and those cultures do it that way too, not addictively, just as a religion. Right. Hey, you know what I mean?
Sure.
That's awesome. But that's a different thing. That's a different thing than like every day getting high, to check out.
To function.
To function. That's different.
That quote is on page 149.
Whoa,
you can go back.
Does it have the guy who wrote that book?
Dr. Gabor Mate.
That's the guy. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, in the realm of hungry ghosts, close encounters with addiction.
That's what it is, yeah.
There you go.
Cool. I'm glad I got that in there.
Okay. Slid it right in. I highlighted it by the pool.
I love it. I got to read my book again.
You should. You should read it. It's pretty good. So you kind of surrender to this process a couple of different times, and you do actually start playing music. You start playing music in a band, okay, with a couple friends,
right? And
then you're still dabbling in clowngicianing.
Oh, like I was doing when I moved out of the ministry and came to California. Right. And I was still high. I was still in relapse mode after leaving there. Okay. That's right. Okay, go ahead.
And then, you kind of have a number of experiences where you start to experience serendipity with Mary, who...
Oh, my God.
That
this person... so powerful.
Yeah. And so you describe and I'll let you talk about...
Mary. Her name was Mary.
Yeah. I mean, the irony was not lost on me.
Oh, my God.
You are...
Totally broke
as a joke.
Broke as a joke.
And you have put an ad in the paper that you are for hire as a clown, but you decide to start another business.
That's right.
Because you need money. So you decide to start washing windows.
Right.
And you are literally, I believe, about to be evicted. Like something you had no money.
Well, she was my friend, but yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, all my debt collectors were pounding at the phone, calling, all this stuff, and I was getting very depressed. And
it's a tough place to be.
What, in the Bay Area?
To be in the Bay Area, but just also with no money. I mean,
right.
And no, those calls don't stop.
No. And plus you're trying to live you're starting off your little dreams or fledgling little dreams, and things are kind of here and there happening, but I'm also kind of dealing with my addiction, right?
Yep.
And I'm in denial
Yep.
at this point. So the business I called myself Dave Does Windows. That was the name of the business. So I just love the title itself. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. So I started doing these windows, and I get this call, and
I didn't get the reference to that name until you just said it. I didn't get it reading the book. That makes it so much funnier now. I totally didn't get it.
Like how people say, I'll do everything, but I don't do windows.
I don't do windows.
But Dave
or
does
I was
windows.
thinking also Debbie does Dallas.
I know, right?
And David does windows. Whatever.
There was multitudinous levels of illusion there.
It's very multifaceted. It's a good joke, regardless.
So yeah, I didn't even think about the Debbie Does Dallas. That's pretty good. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that weird? That was the first thing I thought of.
So anyway, yeah. So I got to that point. It was very dark, and I think I just prayed. I wasn't high or anything. I just prayed. I said, God, you know what? I was starting to do affirmations. I think I was kind of into this. I was kind of exposed to the whole, new agey kind of stuff. And I said, God, I'm being positive here, but if you help me, just send me something. I don't know what I need help. And at that moment, the phone rang. It was just really weird. And I just, wow. I went to answer the phone, and this lady on the other side sounded very excited. She said, "Oh, are you Dave?" And I said, "Yeah." And, "Oh, could you come over and wash my windows?" I said, "Sure, I'll be." She gave me the address.
Windows.
I do windows. I'll be right over there. Cool. I was like, "Yeah, I got a gig." And so I drove my truck out over there, and when I walked around the house, and this old lady, she's like in her 80s, really cheery. And I gave her my estimate. I said, "Okay, Mary, I could do your windows, probably about, $35 for the whole thing." And she goes, $35? I said, "Okay, well, how about $32.50?" And she goes, No, I'm going to pay you more than $35. I said, "Well, okay, if you want to tip me, that's fine, whatever, but I only expect $35. I said, "Okay." So I started washing the windows. She starts helping me wash the windows.
Well, she's 80.
She's 80. She's
what
like,
is she gonna do?
And she's finding out. She's asking me questions about my story. I'm telling her the whole thing. I left the ministry, come out here to be this clown entertainer, and I'm, so I'm doing all these odd jobs. I'm babysitting, teaching guitar lessons.
Whatever you can do. You're scrappy. You are a scrapper.
I'm a scrapper. I'll do whatever it takes. So I did all these things. So at the end of the whole thing, she makes me lunch, sits me down, and then she hands me this check. And I'm looking at it, and I thought it said $50. I'm like, whoa, $500? She wrote a check for $500. I said, "Mary, you can't give me, this is $500. You can't give me $500. I said, she goes, no, don't you tell me what to do with my money. I want to give you this money. I said, okay, but she was kind of funny.
So
too.
cool.
And then she gave me, here, you can take this microwave too. She gave me a microwave.
God,
and
you're
a whole bunch of
describing
change.
something. My mother would do that. My mom would 100% do that. And now I probably would too. My mom would totally do that.
Yeah. It was so funny. And I could not believe it. I was just like, oh my God, I can pay off my student loans. They've been calling lately. And, oh, Mary, this is so great. I can't wait. I'm going to do this. And then I went out, I paid off the 2 payments that were due for the loans. And I bought my first clown costume that I've been wanting to buy.
Way.
Yeah, I bought my costume.
I forgot that part.
And my ad in the Peninsula Parent Magazine. And it got my whole thing started. My whole Daffy Dave. I was able to finally get it off the ground because of Mary. And then I was like, oh my God. And then like 2 months later, I sort of forgotten about the whole thing. And like 2 months later, I'm like totally broke again, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I can barely. I'm doing all these Barney the Dinosaur gigs for this guy, and all the, kids are peeing on my Barney legs, and just like, just
parents are offering you bumps.
Oh yeah,
off
totally.
The dryer.
I know.
So
I'm like,
that is crazy. That was crazy.
It was. I'm like the dad wanted Barney to do blow on those washing machine. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, I'm Barney the Dinosaur. I can't do blow.
But still, you could have, and you didn't.
I didn't do it. So anyway, I was desperate again. I was hurting. I was on my knees again. I said, God, it's really hurting. I don't know what to do. Help me out. And so I get a call. I swear to God, right after I prayed again. I mean, it was just weird. And it's Mary. Hey, Dave, it's Mary. I was just wondering, could you give me a drive to my bank in Oakland? I'll pay you $1,000 cash. What? Mary, is this you? Yeah. She said, come on over.
She's your benefactor.
Oh my God. She did it every time and I swear to God, I wasn't calling her. I wasn't doing anything, but every single time that first, whatever year it was of that, she would call me every time I needed help and pay me $1,000. She gave me like $8,000 in that whole period of time.
I mean,
unbelievable. And then now she's gone. She's just vanished.
Those are just the breaks.
Oh my God.
That the universe gives you.
That's what I mean.
And so what point in that are you trying to get sober? Okay.
So as I'm getting these signs and these things are working or whatever. I'm following my bliss. The people are coming. I'm starting to get more gigs. At one point I had to, I did have to take a full-time job working with developmentally disabled, or what, there's different terms, challenged. I think they've changed the terms. And I was, for a whole year, I was working with them. I was working 7 days a week. I was doing gigs on the weekend.
Who was that? Who were you working with?
They were actually adults that were developmentally delayed, and we would take them out in the community. Okay. And, I was like their instructor and everything. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I was doing all that. And I just realized at the end of that year, I finally said, okay, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do Daffy Dave full on. I have the money now. I can do it. All my debts are paid off. And then all of a sudden I started doing Daffy Dave and all of a sudden the addiction, I was just going, you know what? I'm starting to love this so much. It's starting to work for me, but the addiction thing is just kicking me, It's just like I don't want to like leave my room sometimes. I'm like, I can't even, like, my thoughts are getting garbled, So I started looking, I went back to church actually. I was like, okay, I was going to New Age, Kundalini yoga. I was doing all these things to try to get out of my using, right? And but it would never do it. So that's when I was hitting the bottom, and I wasn't getting high anymore. And I just like, okay, I gotta go back to 12-step recovery. And I did. I went in and finally I surrendered.
I mean, it's just so self-actualized of you to be able to get yourself there. I mean, I have not experienced addiction in that way. Yeah. What I have experienced is anxiety, where you look at yourself and you're like, this is not how I'm going to operate moving forward. Yeah, right. But that's a hard place to get to.
Yeah. And how somebody gets there. I mean, I don't, it's a mystery really. And sometimes people never really do wake up no matter how much pain, Yeah. Some people commit suicide, some people die.
Well, this part of your book, the quote I'm going to read, and what you call the law, your dad called it the law of reversed effect.
Well, he actually got that from Alan Watts, which is the law of reversed effort.
Yes, excuse me, the law of reversed effort. Mm-hmm. It applies to those moments in your life where the harder you try to do something, the further away from the goal you get, such as when you try to go to sleep and end up wide awake, staring in the dark for hours.
Yep.
And that really spoke to me, because I feel like that's exactly what happens. And I think maybe that's a little bit what you're describing right now, is you're trying so hard to get high and is just completely having the opposite effect.
Exactly.
So you go back to 12 steps.
Yep.
And things start to happen.
Yep.
Right?
Totally happened. See, here's when it started working. 12-step recovery started working for me. When I surrendered to not only the fact that I was an addict, or that I was, dependent and everything, and I had a problem, whatever, with it, but now that I also needed the solution. I needed to have a spiritual community of support that were people who identified with that, because they too were in recovery. Once I surrendered to both the problem and the solution, that's how now 22 years later I've been able to stay
really
clean,
You have to surrender to the problem and the solution.
And every day you're in the solution. I'm still going to meetings. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. I'm still working the steps. 6 times I've worked the steps. I mean, I'm constantly in it.
That is a profound thought, though. Mm-hmm. Surrendering to both the problem and the solution, because I think you do think the solution is going to be easy, but it's not always that easy.
Oh no! Oh my God, no! But it's a lot easier than staying stuck in the problem. I mean, staying as an active addict was the hardest job I've ever had.
Yeah.
Recovery is the kinder, gentler, softer, easier path.
Well, again, another thing, to me, what you're describing, the via negativa to self-discovery, right? Where you had to try on all these different versions of yourself to find out which one fit. So, you know, the prayer becomes, please show me who I am by showing me who I'm not.
Right.
And I think that describes kind of the second half of your journey. Like you've tried on all these Daves.
Yep.
And I mean, you even write about it. Your suit was too tight in your ministry,
right.
All of that. So now you've tried Crazy Dave.
Yep.
Dave does windows. Those
but then
work.
Crazy Dave morphed into Daffy Dave.
Tell me how you got the Daffy Dave.
See, I was struggling with the name.
I like it.
Crazy Dave was like, it was at the very beginning, right? 1992 or so in the Bay Area. And I was just like, you know, Crazy Dave, I think it sounds a little too
crazy,
intense. Yeah. For like moms who wanted to book me. It's like, I got to come up with a different name.
I was reading the book like I would so not hire Crazy Dave.
Right. Exactly. That's the same thing as I was talking to other people, entertainers too. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to ask people what do you think of other different names? And so that same day, two people, my guitar student that day said, what about Daffy Dave? I said, oh, wow. I love that sound. And then that night I was going to do some windows at some lady's house, and she also said, you know, what about Daffy Dave? So other people named me. You know, it wasn't me. I just loved the way it sounded. It was like, oh my God, yeah, Daffy Dave. Kids actually chant that name. And when I go to sometimes people,
watched it.
Daffy Dave, they just chant that name. But it's like, so I was named by other people, which is great because, you know, I didn't know. So it became more marketable, you know what I mean? More palatable for people wanting to hire, you know, a birthday clown or whatever. So that's how that name came about. But what was really hard, that first year of accepting both the problem and the solution, right? I was still struggling because every day I still had the obsession to use. And people were saying, hey man, just keep coming back and, you know, it will be lifted, right? Man, I went to this really big celebration of recovery, and there was a very well-known, famous rock star that played there for us who was like one of my heroes, right? And I could not believe it. And I was like watching this clean, you know, 8 months clean. I just made my first amends to my father. And oh my God, I'm just like bawling, tears coming out of my eyes. I couldn't believe it.
Because you didn't know this person was in recovery also.
Right. And they said that they were in recovery, and the whole place went crazy. And it was like, oh my God, everybody's like, wow, you know, and it was just within our fellowship. Nobody was knowing about this. Is not a public thing, right? Because, you know, anonymity, right? It's an anonymous program. But it just changed my life because I realized, wow, this is what it can be like, right? And it was like the next day, I swear to God, I had no obsession to use anymore because I felt like I finally let 12-step recovery into my heart. Like I'd finally accepted it really in my heart. And so the obsession went away. I didn't have any obsession after that. And then, you know, so at that point I was able to, you know, start to find a new way to live, you know, without mind, mood altering substances, you know, and I was so blown away that the obsession was gone because that was the one part I didn't think was going to work. You know, the abstinence was working. I could see that, but I didn't think about the obsession being removed. You know, I was like, oh, is this ever going to work? And it did. And 22 years later, you know, it continues to work. And as long as I keep working it. So I'm profoundly grateful. And, you know, my life, my God, ever since that time, I mean, you know, then I like took off with Daffy Dave, you know, TV show, 10 CDs for kids, a YouTube thing that took off, 25 million views, you know, and then I got into the arts, paintings are selling like left and right, took 4 trips to Europe, bought a home on all this Daffy Dave income, you know, and then I'm helping out people left and right, and I'm like, living the life of my dreams. I'm a writer, an author, and I'm working on a trilogy, a novel. Just sold a painting to somebody in France and London. I mean, things are just going crazy.
Well,
you know?
I mean, you're describing a miracle.
Yeah.
I have to say, I haven't read a book in 2 years.
I've been there before. I know what you mean.
But I really, truly... and it's because I know of you, and I was very curious about your story, but your book has touched my soul, Dave, for real. And I took away so much from it. And I was trying to describe you to somebody close to me and they were like, tell me about it. And like, Dave is like, he's like the guy you want to have to dinner. He's like the guy that you want to be the mentor to your kid. Aww. He's like the grandpa you wished you had, you know, like he's that nurturing. And that is how I see you. And I see you with this class that you're teaching. I see you with my son, and I see that self-actualization flow through you, and that surrender and that acceptance. Yeah. I loved one thing you wrote, because I believe that it is true in my life as well. And I'm reading it, but it says, every time I think I'm hip, slick, or cool, something happens to show me who I really am. And that's a clown. Wow,
that's really true.
And when I read that, I thought, because that kind of is why, a similar thinking is why I started this podcast, because it's like every time I start to get judgmental or super catty or snarky about somebody, you're like, oh, well, they just got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, or, oh, they're in addiction, so maybe they're having a tough day. You know, it always comes back to me being the asshole. Yeah. And so that resonated with me because the universe does kind of turn that lens. But your book is such an open account of your life. It is so deep, so self-actualized. Your poetry, you have poetry kind of sprinkled throughout the book, both you and your dad, and it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Poetry is saying all the wrong words
Richard Hugo said, poetry is saying the right things with the wrong words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the whole thing. And I would encourage anybody to get this book. You can get it on Amazon, Coyote Spirit. It is a wonderful read. And also, if you need a performer who you know is going to nurture your kids and keep them entertained, Daffy Dave, you're the best. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your heart with me today, and also with my son. It means a lot.
Oh, you're so welcome. Can I end? I don't know if this is feeling like it's wrapping up. I don't know if it is or not, but can I say the one thing that I didn't mention that was a powerful change for me too in this journey was coming back here to Seattle after being in the Bay Area for about 25 years.
It was pretty recent.
Really recent, about two years ago, and it was a couple different things there. I mean, I felt like I was like, okay, 25 years Bay Area. I mean, I've done all the circuits over and over again. I need something new. And plus I had this injury in my neck. I was like, oh my God, I got to start getting physical therapy. And I couldn't do certain tricks in my show. And I was like, I need to think about that. And then at the same time, my parents, they're in their 80s, and they were like, they kind of needed help, right? And everybody, all my family, they live up here, and they were wanting me to come home for years. Why don't you come back here and live around? And I needed to be away for a long time to find myself, I guess you could say. But I got to the point in my recovery, in my spiritual journey, and all these trips I took to Europe, and I kind of got all that stuff out of my system. It's like now the journey was to come home and to help my parents, And I sold my mobile home back there in San Jose, and was able to build a little thing here and help my parents out. And I do that every day. I'm there. I'm checking. My sisters we're like a team, right? We grew up in Hawaii, so Ohana is all about the family, right? And so it's been a really huge reward to help my parents, at their end. And they're still doing okay, but they're still, they're getting close. I mean, they're not getting any younger, kind of thing. But I get to be there, and they appreciate it so much. Oh my God! Because now they don't have to be in a nursing home, and I get to be there and be their kind of their caregiver / still get to be kind of semi-retired Daffy Dave out here and doing my art and do my writing. I still get to do it all, but it's a different kind of a thing. And but it makes me feel so full in my heart, and to be reconnecting with my sisters again, that is a huge reward of sticking with like the recovery path too, because it allows me to have that awareness to value that, to value that whole thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Surrendering to the solution.
Yep. Exactly. Right. Because it's what needs to happen right now. That is what needs to happen right now. and I don't know where, actually I started thinking about how great my parents have appreciated me being there, for them. And I thought, wow, you know what am I going to do? You know what I mean? When I get, after this chapter. Yeah. And so I've been starting to think about like, maybe it's time to finally live out my one dream I had back in college, which is to create a kind of a co-housing community, maybe a tiny home retirement co-housing community, so we can all help each other. All these wayfaring, crazy souls.
Luke can come in and take care of you guys. He can be the landlord. Just in another 10 years, he'll be ready.
I know, right? Yeah. So I'm starting to envision that. Just planting the seeds, nothing big.
Well, be careful. It seems like when you plant seeds, they happen.
Oh boy, a lot of people are interested in it. I started a page on Facebook about it.
Well, I'm going to put links to all of this in the show notes.
Okay.
Dave, I just love you to pieces. I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for you, for my family, and for all the kids that have grown up with you.
Oh, thank you.
Because clearly you bring more than just clowngicianing to the table.
Thank you so much. And thank you for creating this possibility. I think it's a real, I don't know what to call it, a service. You're a creative service that you're giving back to us. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. I think all of us lead these lives that don't make our Instagram feed, our Facebook page, and we all have real struggles, and we all can relate more than we think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole goal of this podcast, is to not only highlight what real people go through, but also what happens when you ask somebody that's in your proximity just 2 more probing questions.
Wow.
I mean, just a simple question like, how did you get into clowning? Like, you have a gift and you're like, well, I wrote a book about it.
Yep.
And then taking that step and just being curious and inquisitive and knowing that everybody we come across has something to offer. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if you can approach it from a non-judgmental position, which is hard for all of us to just say, tell me about it and let me receive information. Mm-hmm. I think we all win. It's an act of peace. That's how I look at it.
So true. It's so true. Just surrender. And there's no one big surrender in the sky. It's just, it's a constant surrendering all the time.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'm certainly learning that, but I felt like I had a door open, and I know it sounds stupid, but literally my anxiety has been like pretty high since I had my daughter, and it's been very difficult for me to sit down and read a book.
Yeah.
But I read this book in like 3 days because I wanted to give it the respect it deserves. It is not easy to write a book. Let's just say that. It is it's such a huge accomplishment. Yeah. And you haven't just written one.
No, the other ones are in the pipeline.
Yeah, but I know that you don't have a ton of time. So for you to carve out time and bare your soul is meaningful, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And if there's anybody who can inspire out there, that's my only hope. That can inspire other people's self-discovery and creativity of some kind.
Yeah, and just know that when you see Daffy Dave, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to that act than meets the eye, and hopefully everybody will see you soon and hire you and buy your art and get your book.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
During this time when we're all at home trying to be the best teachers and parents we can, Dave is posting songs, magic lessons, magic tricks, and overall nonsense on his YouTube and his Facebook page. So please like and subscribe. I'll have links in my show notes. Even in crisis, Dave is the kind of guy to dig down and do whatever he can to help out. He's been able to pivot and go digital in a record amount of time, much like my kids' teachers, much like all of us. So everyone's efforts are so appreciated. Thank you, Dave, for your honesty, your incredible spirit, and for sharing your story. Everybody, please buy his book. It's a genuinely good read. I'll post the Amazon link so you can find it, but it's called Coyote Spirit. Hire him for an event when we're all out of this nightmare. As an artist, he's struggling just like the rest of us. And Believe me, we all need Dave to make us laugh. When I launched this podcast back in October, I had no idea what I was doing or that the stories I'd find would resonate with anyone at all. But after 10 episodes and more than 2,500 downloads, I am proud and really excited to have begun working on a season 2. I'm already working on stories to bring you, but it's going to take me a second, especially now. But this coronavirus situation creates a motivation in me that's pretty powerful. Living in a historical moment creates an opportunity to gather people together to talk about something really big. I'm hoping I can find some of these people, and I'm hoping you all can help me find some of those people as well. In the meantime, please take care of your family, yourself, and your neighbors as much as you can. There will be content coming in the next few weeks, so please subscribe everywhere. You can find me at In Front of My Face on Twitter, at Right In Front of My Face on Facebook and Instagram, so you don't miss it. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, when you are talking to people at a socially distant 6 feet, take 2 more minutes to ask 1 or 2 more questions, dig a little bit deeper, and learn more about what's happening right in front of your face.